Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Brad. Good morning. My name is Erin Rogers, and I work for Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I'm here representing the United States Department of Energy's International Nuclear Security, INS's Nuclear Security Culture team. And it's been wonderful to see the interaction the last 2 days I've been here. Like Charlie or Charles and Chris, our cyber experts from yesterday said, I'm not a sabotage expert, but I'm still happy to be here to share my experience in the area of nuclear security culture and to learn a bit from you and from my US team on the topic of sabotage, and specifically from you in the area of nuclear security culture. I've worked on nuclear security culture initiatives for about 10 years now. Almost all the work I've done has been internationally in the nuclear and radioactive fields. And I've spent a lot of time working with the IAEA on their nuclear security culture efforts. And that's how I know Kai Rule. I don't think he's here yet, but I've had the great pleasure of working with and learning from him for many years. And so I hope he's able to join us today. We've worked together to develop nuclear security culture training modules for the IAEA. We've worked together to help member states draft regulations and recommendations for nuclear security culture. Kyril and I have worked together to draft IAEA guidance documents on nuclear security culture, and the most recent of which was just published maybe a month or two ago, NSS 38T, which is the guide for nuclear security culture enhancement, in which we can talk more about in a little bit. I'd be curious to know if you've seen it yet. It's long, so maybe you haven't had the chance to read it yet, but I know that you've been implementing some of the recommendations in there. So I'd be happy to hear and interested to hear how that's been going. It's really been one of the highlights of my work to be mentored by Kyrul, and so I'm very excited to be here with you today and to talk about the great work Indonesia has done with regard to nuclear security culture enhancement. So thank you for the opportunity. So we did put together some slides on nuclear security culture, which we have. Kate, are you able to pull those up, please? Thank you so much. Okay, and maybe we can go to the objective slide 3. Thank you. So I would say our primary objective here today is to provide a forum to discuss best practices in the area of nuclear security culture and to remind ourselves of why we want to work continuously to enhance it. We'll talk a little bit about the benefits, what we have done in the area and what we're currently doing and what we could be doing better. And of course, because this is our time, we can be open to discussing other nuclear security culture related topics. So at any time, please feel free to interrupt. As Jeremy said, with any questions, comments, stories. This session is about culture, and there's nobody in the world that knows your culture better than you. And so you are the expert here. You're the expert today. And of course, because it's about culture at your site and your workplace, and not some technical thing like Chris and Charlie were showing us yesterday with the analog versus the digital. There's no wrong answers. It's about culture, and we encourage you to share your experiences and your questions and your comments. By the way, because I'm not as technical by nature as Charlie or Chris from yesterday, we don't have that really fancy, cool Mentimeter thing that they used in our presentation here. But so we'll just rely on some old-fashioned discussion, talking, and we can feel free to use the chat as well. So please, again, feel free to interrupt at any time. I don't usually like to call anyone out, but I didn't have a chance yesterday to compliment Hannah on her English. So Hannah, if you're here, just want you to know I think your English is great, and we encourage you to practice today if you're comfortable.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Yeah.
So the next slide, this is our, so maybe in the chat, we can start in the chat or by unmuting yourself. Let us know what you think of when someone says the term security culture. And by the way, in in Indonesia, are you saying nuclear security culture, or are you saying security culture? We say nuclear security culture because that's what the IAEA calls it, but of course, what we mean when we say security culture is, we're talking about all our facilities and not just the nuclear ones. So what is the term that you use, or how is that? Is anyone willing to share? Just the term, do you say nuclear security culture? Do you say security culture? I think your center is called the Center for Security Culture, right? An assessment? Anyone? I don't know, is it in the chat maybe? Well, anyway, regardless of whether you call it security culture, nuclear security culture, in the chat, maybe, or by unmuting, maybe you can just write 1 or 2 or 3 words, just something short, or say about what you think of when someone says nuclear security culture or security culture. Doesn't have to be anything too mechanical, methodical. We're not going to analyze it too deeply. It's just what you think of. And again, let's try to reduce it to just a couple of words.
So Hannah wrote in the chat, set of characteristics to implement nuclear security well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hannah. Other ideas, like when I hear the term nuclear security culture, I for whatever reason think of the color blue, probably because the IAEA guides are like blue. And I also think of sleeping guards for a couple of reasons. One, because we had done an exercise with one of our partner countries, one of their other member states, and we had asked them to, during the workshop, we had suggested that they come up with designs for a poster that they may make for to promote a positive nuclear security culture, and someone had drawn some sleeping guards. So I always have that like image in my head. And then there's also, like, when I first started this job, I worked with someone who did a case study about real life case of sleeping guards at a plant in the United States. They were sleeping on the job. Fortunately, there was no significant incidents as a result, but they were recorded doing so, and it was shared with the media, and it caused a tremendous amount of embarrassment for the plant and guards, as you can imagine, and management there, and that resulted in hefty fines. A lot of people got fired, lost their jobs. So those are 2 things I think of: sleeping guards and the color blue. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we have two things in chat. One is two of them are referencing NSS7.
Okay.
Mohammed and Adil, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. And then Wida did behavior on implementing the nuclear security.
Okay, great. So it's so things related to nuclear security, and then NSS7. That's one of our guidance documents, which I think we have. Actually, yeah, Kate, if you want to go to the next slide. On our next slide, we have a picture of NSS7, an image of NSS7, and that's
I have a question for the audience. In the reaction button on your right-hand side, who has read NNS7 or any of these IEA technical documents? If you have, raise your hand so we can see.
I don't see the reaction button.
So it's next to the interpretation button. There's a reaction button. If you don't have one, then, or maybe in chat, how about you put a Y for yes?
Yeah.
In chat, that might be better.
Also, just for future use, if you're in a newer version of Zoom, it's going to be at the bottom of your screen near that interpretation button. If you're in an older version of Zoom, maybe a couple versions back, it's going to be on your participants panel.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Sure.
So a Y for yes in the chat if you are familiar with any of these NSS IEA guides, nuclear security series implementing guides, or what was the other option, Jeremy?
You can raise your hand with the reaction button.
There we go.
So we have a handful of people with their hands raised.
Yeah, so I figured you may be familiar because, again, of your experience in this area. So we have the NSS7, which someone mentioned. That's the original guidance document from 2008. And we also have the IAEA definition of nuclear security culture on the screen here. And that was first defined in the NSS 7. And then since that time, IAEA has released 2 other nuclear security culture documents. One is NSS 28T, which is the self-assessment guidance document, and the other one is 38T, which is the new one we mentioned earlier on enhancement. And also because our DOE, our Department of Energy, nuclear security culture team falls under the insider threat mitigation team. And because insider threat mitigation is so closely related to nuclear security culture, as Brad touched upon in his presentation on Tuesday, we included IAEA's guidance document on insider threat, NSS 8, which I think was just republished as 8G. Does anyone know what updates were made to make it 8G? Because I need to look into that. It went from 8 to 8G, and it was just updated. Well, we think these are great references, and you've like you've put in the chat, you may have seen them before. Kyrul was involved in writing many of them. The original includes the IAEA model for nuclear security culture and talks about some of the concepts. The self-assessment guide gives options for performing self-assessments of nuclear security culture and gives examples of the different methods you could use to perform them, like surveys, interviews, observations. The enhancement guide, that's the newest one, that gives a lot of example activities that stakeholders, the facility, the organization, the head of the organization, the manager, the general employees can take to improve nuclear security culture. And it includes all sorts of things from drafting a regulation for nuclear security culture and enforcing the regulation to the things like wearing your badge, reporting if you see something unusual. So it has a ton of different activities that stakeholders may take in support of of robust nuclear security culture. And it also includes key elements that you may want to consider if you're setting up a program for nuclear security culture enhancement, like issuing a regulation or a recommendation, performing self-assessment, offering training, offering human resource elements. There's ones that they recommend to recognize good performance of personnel, like employee recognition program. Those are things like if someone performs a positive nuclear security activity, like wearing their badge properly all the time and reporting something that they've seen, they may get a special employee of the month parking spot, or their picture on a bulletin board, or a shout out during a department meeting. We had something similar like that today at DOE. And then it has, these human resource elements may include something like a program to alleviate stressors. For example, an employee assistance program, which could be available to employees and include things like babysitting services, monetary loans, care for elderly parents that you may have to take care of, counseling, treatment for drug and alcohol misuse, things like that. And these are some, again, of the human resource elements that are in the NSS 38T, the enhancement guide for nuclear security culture. And one of the things, I could go on and on about this guide because it's just been published, and Kyrul and I work together again to help the IAEA draft it. But I was wondering if you already do any of these things in Indonesia. And again, it includes things like self-assessment, regulations or recommendations, promotional products for nuclear security culture, like that poster I was talking about before. One of the member states or partner countries we work with, they drafted a book of terms and definitions for nuclear security culture. Another one does a newsletter on nuclear security culture and distributes it to to employees every month. So is there anything that you're currently doing in Indonesia that may fall under that category of elements of positive nuclear security culture?
Hey, Aaron, Kyril is joined too. So I think he could maybe answer that question.
Kyril,
Good morning,
Yes.
Kyril.
Yes, thank you, Erin and
Good
Jeremy
morning.
and all colleagues, and good morning. And nice to see you here. And I do hope my other colleague in the self-assessment team will give some comment about our activities currently. So I may say that we still continue to conduct what we call it dissemination or internalization of nuclear security culture for the entire workforce after we did maybe we did about 4 times of self-assessment since 2012 at the trial, at the first trial, and then 2015 and 16 as the second self-assessment. And then we did the third self-assessment at Bataan Reactor Source Facilities in 2018 until 2019. And last year, because the pandemic, we did only one tools, that's survey only through the internet, meaning that we are looking for the security index in our facilities in Bataan, Jogja, Bandung, and Serpong. What was happened during after the second and the third semester. That's what we did in Bataan right now. Thank you, Eric and Jeremy, please.
Thank you, Kyril. I remember you presenting at the IAEA on the self-assessments, and I am shocked, but also I'm shocked to hear that it was 2012 was the pilot for the self-assessments. That's wonderful news. So you have more experience, I think, than many in performing self-assessments there in Indonesia. And then the last one with their survey only, how interesting. It's something that I think of often because, you know, we are having this pandemic. You know, the way of our cultures are changing and the way we are working is changing, and many of us are home. And I would imagine it's very difficult to perform a self-assessment while everyone is home. So I give you a lot of credit for doing the survey and distributing that to employees during this challenging time. So thank you for sharing that information.
Thank you, Erin. But I think you may also address your credit to the top management, I mean the management in Bataan, because without their support, without directive letter provided by the chairman at the time, we are nothing. We cannot do anything. But again, this the sample of the collaboration between expertise, technical experts with the top leader. Once the top leader convinced what we are doing is compliance with the national nuclear security regime, as well as the global nuclear security regime, such as a convention of physical protection, and also with the ICSAN. ICSAN is the International Convention of Suppression Act of Nuclear Terrorism. There are 2 global nuclear security regimes that we refer, and the Indonesian government ratified that to our own regulation, precedent regulation. So that's why we encourage the top leader to support us as a technical expert to conduct this, and so that's why he suggests to make the team. So there are several colleagues. One of them is Mr. Bayu in this room, in this Zoom meeting, and other is from Human Resource. That's kind of the great effort, I may say, from the top leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Kyril, before you joined, I was talking about how I am honored to have worked with you and how we had the great opportunity to work together to draft some of the IAEA workshop material. And a lot of it of what we were drafting was material for managers in nuclear security culture. And, you know, we know, you know, from our involvement with that the support of top management is very, very important and key. And how wonderful that you were able to get that buy-in in Indonesia, and that Mr. Bayu and the others were able to see the value in placing the emphasis on the culture, because that's the people. You know, we in our industry, we're always, nuclear security is about, the equipment and the policies and the procedure, and nuclear security culture is about the people. And it's relatively easy to fix the equipment, but it's not as easy to fix the people. And it's so good to hear that, and not surprising at all that you have that support from the top. So thank you for sharing.
So Aaron,
You're
there's a comment in the chat from Hannah. It says some of us have the tendency to have idealized answers during answering the questionnaire on nuclear security culture. Hence, some answers are not reflecting the actual conditions and yield good scores. Do you have a suggestion for this?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. That's certainly true. And one of the recommendations is to, when you're performing a self-assessment, to use.
Aaron, you accidentally muted yourself.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Hannah, for that question. One of the recommendations when you're performing self-assessments is to have to use a variety of the tools, including the surveys, but combined with the observations, combined with the interviews. If you combined with the review of all the documents that are available, like the regulations and the recommendations, and if you do a variety, you're more likely to get a more round. A good, a better set of answers, and some more information. But of course, because of the pandemic, as Mr. Khairul was saying, it was difficult. And I again credit Indonesia for even attempting to do the self-assessment during the pandemic, because I think it's probably safe to say that many organizations were very focused on, we are now have people working from home. How do we get the work done? It's almost like we may have gone back to having the mission as the most important. And it sounds to me like Indonesia was really putting the focus on the people that were actually doing the work. So again, I commend you for that good work. But again, the recommendation is to use a variety of sources to get the information, and not just the one. But sometimes you do the best that you can, and I think you can get a good idea from that information. But I agree with you that people do sometimes aren't always very honest when they put all their answers down, because they want to have it be a positive reply. So anyone else have any input on that? Thank you for that question, Hannah.
So Aaron, what do you suggest the organizations do to make more of a so that people feel more comfortable answering the questionnaire? What would you do if this was done in the U.S.?
That's a good question, Jeremy. Thank you. So if I were heading up the self-assessment and had the opportunity to work to draft the questions, I would make sure, or try to make sure, that I, first we're able to do the observations too, because I think if your management, one of the key things is to be involved with your people, and if you're not face to face with them, you can pick up the phone and call them. You can have meetings with them. I think many of us on the U.S. team had meetings with our management for about 8 hours today. So we're always interacting, and despite most of us working from home. And so again, I think in order to get the best results, you try to also be in contact with your people. But then if you're relying on the surveys, you can put things like, this survey, please feel free to omit your name from this survey. That's one way to make it so that people don't feel pressured to answer one way or another. I feel that way. I have these self-assessment type activities that come through on the computer, and sometimes it says you can remain anonymous, and I'm thinking, is it really anonymous, because it's going from my work computer to my job? So I always think, but I also recognize that there's value in being honest. I think that that's part of what makes a good culture, right? If you can feel free to report your concerns or issues, then that's what leads to improvement. And that's really sometimes the only way to make things better, is to just be honest with what's, what could use improvement. So thank you, Jeremy. I see we have some more info in the comments. Is it maybe we can have some translation?
Yeah, that's in.
Oh, thank you.
That's in English now. I just encourage my colleague who joined with the self-assessment and also did survey, security survey last year, and they found maybe some obstacle or challenges. And then in this forum, I really encourage my colleague to raise the question, comment, and so on. So we are waiting for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I have a question for everybody. How does security culture affect sabotage on a research reactor? So this course is about sabotage mitigation, but do you think that having a good security culture will help mitigate potential sabotage of a research reactor, or do you think it doesn't matter? And maybe Kyril could answer that, or someone else. I think Kyril's typing. So let me rephrase the question. Who can stop insider threat mitigation? What's the main person that can do that? Hannah, do you know?
I'm sorry, it's been noisy in here. Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Sure. I said,
Yeah.
If there's an insider threat incident, an adversary that's an who can stop that person?
Who can solve? Of course, the fellow employees, especially the people around their rooms and who work with them. They should be the one who first recognize that there is an insider among them.
Correct. And so culture that's one part of culture, is making sure that you're aware of things around you, and you have the awareness or the recognition to report that person or talk to that person before they do something nefarious, like open a valve or something like that could cause the reactor to be drained or go critical or do whatever. And so you are the first line of defense against the sabotage mitigation effort. And culture is one of the main proponents that you need to have for that to happen, is a good security culture. And so there's some questions in the chat.
Yes, let's see.
And Kami, feel free to speak up too if you'd like.
Yeah.
So I think the translation is the knowledge of these rights. I mean, like the recognition that they need to report must be equally understood. So we can work together.
The knowledge is still meets equally in that institution. So meaning that the employee need to receive training from the management, I think. So that's one comment from my colleague Ira, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Ira and Karul. Yeah, I mean, that's very important, is that
Training.
yes, and that's one of the key elements that IE identifies in nuclear security culture enhancement. Training, and then support by management, again, is another key thing here, in ensuring that their people have time to take the training. And then I think Hannah said something that was very valuable, and Jeremy followed up on it, and it was, the fact that we all have a role to play in nuclear security. It's not something that's just left to the guards. It's something that, we're all part of that security team. And that's one of the foundations, that's the foundation of a strong nuclear security culture. The threat exists, nuclear security is important to mitigate it, and we all have a role to play. And I
Yes,
think that
Arian, during our activities in the dissemination of nuclear security culture, I always emphasize about the triangle of the IA models, where is the system management and the leadership behavior and personal behavior. For example, I give them very simple example, like the leader would like you to be professional, right, in your job. So you can see if the leader provides system management like characteristic of training and qualification. If the leader not provided for you, you can ask politely, talk to the leader.
Yeah.
Sir or madam, I need the training because this not meets with my job if I don't get this training course. So I always emphasize that there is related, what we call it the assembly in the characteristic, right? The people, leader, and system management. So we cannot blame the employees itself because they are stupid and so on. But we can see the other characteristic, though they synergize between in this triangle. That's our activities during the dissemination. Comment from Bayu in the chat column. I think that's a good idea.
So yeah, Bayou said changes at Baton since adopting a culture of nuclear security culture, excuse me, the number of quality training related to security and security culture are increasing respect for security guards, cooperation between safety activists and nuclear security activists is getting stronger.
Yes,
that's
that's good.
wonderful.
I
That's
think
awesome.
Erin,
Yeah.
Jeremy, this is also one good sample for the other member states. I mean, the great effort we made after we conduct several self-assessment, and the leader realized that the training is one of our team recommendation that really put in place by the leader right now. You can see in our training center since 2019 and 2020, we start to invite participants with the course, what we call it, harmonized safety and security culture. The teacher, the instructor is coming from both safety culture people and security culture people. This reflect like the INSAC number 24 2010, the interface between safety and security and also security culture. So we did it in Bataan. Maybe you can share this experience in other countries around the world next time. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Pak Bayu.
Thank you. Yes, we always use Indonesia as an example of good nuclear security culture practices when we share with our international colleagues. And I think that's very important what you said about the synergy between safety and security, because and Khairul, we've had many talks about this at the IAEA too, because when we were writing the enhancement guide or all the draft guidance documents, the safety, we always have a mixed group, and a lot of people want to make sure we include a lot of language for safety, and then other people say no, this is the security guide, and there's always a lot of discussion about having two separate programs, and then people advocate for two separate programs that work together. And I think that you have to really do what works best for your infrastructure, your structure, and how your country, how your sorry, I lost my train of thought. How you're structured, and some countries will have a very strong safety culture and a program for safety culture, and it works for them to just kind of incorporate some security elements and use what worked there. And then others, they kind of maybe would benefit from starting from scratch. But either way, I think it needs to be, in my opinion, it needs to be mixed and synergized, because it really all goes down to the people.
So we have another comment from Ira that says, after participating in this training, in my opinion, all participants are obliged to disseminate this knowledge so that adequate action can be taken as an asset to ward off the worst possibility. So I think that's good. And I think that's one avenue is you have your LMS system, your learning management system, which is a good way to spread information among your colleagues. And if it make it, I mean, I think security culture in general should be something that every new hire and everybody should be participate in when they first get started, and then have reoccurring trainings at least once a year or even once every other year, because this is the one, like I mentioned earlier, it's the main mechanism to stop an adversary, is for everybody to be aware of everything. And having a good security culture is something that can help with that.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. And Kate, could we go to the next slide, please? It'll show the pyramid that Khairul was referencing, the IAEA's nuclear security culture model. And the big takeaway from me has always been the bottom part, you know, that the threat exists, nuclear security is important to mitigate it, and we like to add that everyone has a role to play. It's not just a responsibility of the guards. And it sounds like in Indonesia you've done that. And I'm glad that you are making use of this triangle that was drafted back in 2008 when the first guidance document came out. So thank you for sharing that information. Kate, next slide, please. And here's a quote from our current Director General of the IAEA, which just suggests that we need to work together on this. And so again, I'm thrilled when we have these opportunities to have these types of discussions where we learn from each other, and then where we can, like as Mr. Khairul mentioned, take this back to the other countries we work with and use you as an example of a member state who has done something very positive in the area of nuclear security culture. So thank you for that. Next slide, please, Kate. And here's just our slide on organizational culture. As we know, every organization has a culture. In fact, they have many cultures, and those cultures are created, influenced by the people who work there, their beliefs, their behaviors, you know, how people dress at work, how they greet each other. You know, as was mentioned earlier, it's interesting for me to kind of think of our new way, you know, what our new way of working might be since the pandemic, with all these virtual video calls and meetings. It's for me in New York here, it's 9 o'clock at night, and I worked at home in my office today, and I wore, you know, very casual clothes until the time we had some calls with our management, and then I put on, you know, some more business casual outfits and left it on for this call. And you know, so we behave differently depending on who we're around. So it comes down to the people. So Kate, the next slide, please.
Arian, please back to that previous slide. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also mentioned to all participants during our dissemination on nuclear security culture that security culture is subset in this organization. So even the subset, we cannot underestimate that culture. I mean, security culture, because they can affect a big program in our institution if we underestimate that security culture. So that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and that's very true, that it's a subset. A nuclear security culture and safety culture are subsets of the organizational culture, and we've spoken about that a lot, and it's very interesting. You know, and nuclear security culture, it's about focusing on improving the effectiveness of the security by focusing on the people. And as Khairul said, if we can get people to understand that they are a valued member of the team, regardless, you know, of the security team, they're a valued member of the team, regardless of their actual position, regardless of their role, regardless of their job, they can improve the security.
So one thing we do in the States when it comes to this is we do this for both safety and security. If you see somebody doing something, no matter if it's the janitorial staff or somebody doing maintenance, if they see anybody doing something that's unsafe, whether it's a security violation or a safety violation, they have the authority to stop that individual from going on. And I think that's, it wasn't like that 10 years ago. It's something that has been recently introduced, and recently it's been the last decade. But I think that's something that's very important too. And I know that's something that within Indonesia that you guys have started as well, correct, Khairul?
Yes, it is. We did it.
Yeah, and for us, that definitely took some, it was difficult, the change in culture, I think. And I can think of an example here, probably in the US as a whole, but certainly here in New York, we're trying to have some change in the police force in New York. It's been very difficult. You know, it's kind of like the police are on one side and the civilians are on the other side, and it's really been, you know, created some intense political conversations. And I happen to live across the street from a police station, and it's very interesting. They close the street every Thursday because there's marches that go by, but they're trying to change the culture. Police didn't report on each other, and now they're trying to say, hey, if you tell your coworker, you know, your fellow police officer, that's not right, stop doing that, it may be saving them. It may be saving their job. It may be saving somebody's life. It may be saving the police department from embarrassment. Again, it's a very political and hot topic here in the U.S. and certainly in my city. But it's been interesting to see the shift in culture. And I don't think, in fact, I'm very confident that the change isn't going to come overnight, but they're certainly working. I can see the officers outside my home. They're working to try to make things better, and they're working to try to have a relationship with the civilians so that they're more respected, and that, you know, they can have a conversation with people without people feeling threatened. Because you know, I think that would be beneficial to all. So that's just one example I'm thinking of.
Erin, I read that in the chat column there is a Joe River wrote about the USNRC. There's one program for safety culture that include both safety and security. This is a good sample. In Bataan, for your information, before we conduct self-assessment, the safety culture colleague working by themselves. I mean, they are not invite colleagues from security culture. But when we have done to conduct self-assessment, and top leader asked the safety culture colleague to invite the speaker or the keynote speaker from the security culture to talk in that forum. So now is in progress. I think there's good progress we made from both safety team and security team when we talk about the culture for the employees. Thank you.
You're muted again.
We realize that safety and security is the equal important, right? If you can see the IAEA into January 2014, before the office name is Office Nuclear Security Office, right? And the other is Division of Nuclear Safety. And then in 2014, January, I remember, they make equal. The same name is Division of Nuclear Safety and Division of Nuclear Security. So that's the good example from the IAEA. We are trying to go there, but still made some effort in the harmonize between safety and security. There are experts, senior experts said there is 6 stages, starting from the awareness, phase 1, and the communication, phase 2, and phase 3 is understanding, phase 4, cooperation, phase 5 is integration, and phase 6, maintenance. So we are in the phase 4 right now. We are cooperation between safety and security culture. But we need to get feedback from the audience about our activities so far. So that's a current situation in Bataan. Thank you. Thank you, Jory.
So Aaron, there's a question in chat, and I want you to address it.
Okay. I'm far behind on the chat, I think.
Oh, go to the very bottom. I'm sorry, from Hannah.
Okay, no problem. Hannah, how to encourage that we call Yes. So that was mentioned yesterday, right? And I think, or was it yesterday or the day before? And I remember Carolyn saying, that there are great benefits, sometimes benefits in, calling it out. I mean, and she mentioned that case at her laboratory, Los Alamos, where the person was acting oddly because they had a medical emergency. So that's a rare case, but it certainly does happen. I mean, I can remember a time when I worked at a national lab, and we had to wear our badge, and the rule was we didn't wear our badge off site. We just had to always have our badge on while we were on site, but we couldn't have it on off site. And I had gotten in my car to go off site for lunch. And so as soon as I got in my car, I took my badge off and I started driving. And then I remembered I wanted to get cash from the cash machine that was on site. And so I drove to the cash machine, and I got out of the car and went to the cash machine, and on the way back to the car, the officer there stopped me, and I got written up. For not wearing my badge. And I saw on my way into the place with the cash machine, I saw like 10 people I said hello to, and and I thought, like, later on, if one person had just said, "Hey, where's your badge?" I would have just ran back, and got the badge on, and I would not have gotten that written up. And I had to go talk to my boss and apologize because the department would get a fine if I didn't wear my badge, and I had to go to him and apologize. It was just a big thing, and it was on my permanent record. And so it cost my department some money. It was embarrassing for me, and I had this on my record. And if one person had just said, "Hey, where's your badge?" in a friendly, kind way, it would have helped. So I think that you need to think about ways that you can kindly say, what's going on, and also if we build these relationships with our coworkers, and we're kind of always asking each other, "How are you today?" and we're always checking in with each other, it kind of gives an opportunity for you to see if things are a little off. If your coworker's late 10 times and she or he gets fired, but if you've asked them after the second time, "Hey, why were you late?" They may say, "Oh, I because of the pandemic, my spouse lost the job and I had to get my child to work." Maybe you could help get the child to work. There's lots of things we can do to intervene. Or maybe that person, maybe you can say, "Hey, we have this program that offers babysitting services." I think it's you have to think about ways and find a really kind way to remind your people, your coworkers, of their unsafe or unsecure behavior. And I think if everyone is doing it and it just becomes part of the culture, then it's easier, right? Then you're not the strange person who's doing this strange thing. So yeah, I think that's it. Just has to kind of become part of the culture, and it won't happen overnight. But if you build those relationships, and and I know that the people in your agencies are generally cared for and valued because of the support you have from your management, and the fact that they're doing these nuclear security self-assessments, because it shows that they do value the people who work in their facilities. And so again, I understand that it's not culturally normal for you to ask those questions, but I think if you again think of kind of a kind way to say it, and then there's the training, and maybe in the training it says something about how it can be beneficial, that may help change the culture there a little bit. It's not easy, and it won't be quick, but that's a recommendation that I have. What other recommendations do people have for that?
So Erin, this is Allison.
Hi, Allison.
I used to work at a nuclear power plant for quite a while, and I had put in the chat, I think going to how to create this culture is that your management is also full in and dedicated to this safety culture and coaching people and helping, remind them like you didn't have your badge. And one of our rules was we're not supposed to walk and talk on the telephone. And so our CEO, which was like the biggest, second to the highest nuclear power plant executive, walked on site. He was talking on a phone and was corrected by the security guard and asked to stop. And his comment was, "Thank you so much. I wasn't thinking." And I think if your management has that attitude of, "Wow, thank you for coaching me," and everybody feels empowered to be able to coach or correct anybody, that is where you start to build that strong safety or strong nuclear safety, strong security safety, security culture. And we always had in our training to remind people to not take it personally when you were coached and to always say thank you. So that person is a part of your family and they're looking out for you and wanting to help keep you safe.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, all great points. And we had touched on that earlier with Kyrul saying that the top management was supportive of of all these self-assessments. Again, it's clear to me that your top management is placing emphasis on the value of the people working there, and so I would imagine that he or she and those in upper management are probably willing to listen and understand the benefits of calling someone out on unsafe or unsecure behavior, and so you should have that support. And if you feel like you don't, maybe you should start to show them the benefits. I mean, I know we have this thing where we say in on one of the teams I work with, if you do something good and it makes your manager look good, they're going to appreciate you. So it's a win-win. So yeah, I think it's and we recognize that the cultures are different everywhere. Like in one of the places that we work with, one of the partners that I work with, they are very affectionate. Everyone is family. So when you walk on site, they kiss you, hello, goodbye, and they say something similar. How could I tell on my friend? He's the godfather of my child. And that's, I mean, we literally, he had said that to us, and we understand that. But if you're being made aware of the benefits, it could be helping save that person from losing their job, getting a citation at work like I did, getting in trouble, save them from embarrassment. So it may not be comfortable, but it is the right thing to do. And if everyone's doing it, it becomes easier and easier for all to do. So, and especially top management. So thank you again, Allison, for sharing that. Other comments on that? Because I know that was mentioned as a potential struggle earlier on.
Aaron, I was just gonna say something, if that's okay.
Please, yes. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, so one of the things that I will say is when I read that comment and it said unsafe, sometimes we do work in high radiation areas or radiation areas where we need to be aware of certain things. And I have been in situations where we have to call somebody because they're being unsafe, and you're in the middle of like moving fuel, or you are in an area that maybe is not conducive to say it in a certain manner. And what we always tend to do is, we correct the behavior at that point because we don't want anything to be unsafe. But then after, when we're done with the job and when we're outside the radiation facility, we do talk to that person again, and we make sure that they understand that if it didn't come out right or it was not a certain way, we did it because we needed to put a stop to something that we saw it was unsafe. But at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with it, and we just kind of walk them through that. So that's the other thing that I have learned through the years. Sometimes when you're in a certain place, you might have to act fast, and it might not come out great, but you can go back and address it in a different manner, and just make sure that it's a learning opportunity.
And Jorge, you bring up a good point. And this is my opinion, that if you start with a strong industrial safety culture and radiological safety culture, and you have that is very strong, it's very easy to transition to a strong nuclear safety culture. Because everybody, like starting with using your gloves. If you're telling, if people are constantly coaching, hey, you're not wearing your gloves, you need to be wearing your gloves, people get used to that feedback, and it's much easier to accept it. And then as you move over to your radiological and then to your nuclear safety culture, I feel it's an easier transition.
Yeah, it's thank you, Allison and Jorge, and Jorge. That's another really good point. I mean, that happened to me today at work, actually, and I don't know if Thais is on, but she was part of it. We had gently, kind of joked about a coworker, always kind of speaking up at the last minute. Anytime we'd say the meeting is over, and he would say, "Oh, one more thing," every single time. And then, after he laughed at the joke, and we were kind of laughing. And then right after I sent him a message saying, "I hope we were only kidding. We love you. You're the best. Thank you for your enthusiasm," those kinds of things. So I think, again, it goes back to the relationships you build at work, and your culture. And it's if it's not something you usually do, it's going to be difficult to do at first. But then again, we've done it here in the United States with the masks. There was nobody wanted to wear masks at first for the pandemic, and then people just started wearing them, and it was a change. Now I can't get my son to take his mask off ever because he's always wants to wear it. So it's a change, and it's we did it with the seatbelts in the U.S. It was something that people were adverse to at first. And now I wouldn't ever get in a car without thinking about putting a seatbelt on or taking our shoes off at the airport. I mean, I haven't been to an airport in a while, but after 9/11, after September 11th, the incidents in the U.S., we all started to have to take our shoes off before we got on an airplane. So at first people were adverse to it. Why do I have to take my shoes off? This is ridiculous. This is a hassle. And now, if you've traveled, and more than once, you know that you take your shoes off, and you know why you take your shoes off, because security is asking you to, and you realize and recognize that there's value there. It's to help keep people safe in that instance. So yeah, that's all good points. You can be firm, but kind to your coworker and say, hey, here's what I recognize, maybe you can do this differently. But then at the end of the day, after the workday, kind of joke with them and say, oh, I hope you realize that was just part of the job. So that's another great recommendation from Jorge. Any other comments or questions or recommendations there? I see the chat's active.
Yes, Ira said that correct. I mean, in 2016, I do need to take off my shoes for inspection in the airport. Translation for the chat from Ira Ariati.
Thank you, Ira. Yeah, it's. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask what the one prior to that was.
Oh, it's please share the presentation. Oh no, it's an answer that all presentation material already available in Batan Training Center.
What about the next comment from Hannah about the good practice for observation and the monitoring of social media? Do our U.S. Any of our U.S. Or Indonesian colleagues have any comments on that? we were talking about some social media. We had a US team meeting before this, and we were talking about Facebook and those types of things.
Don't have
Yes,
it. That's
yes,
my answer.
Arian.
That's my
Arian,
yes,
Jeremy,
yes.
this question raised that because we received a lecturing from the US expert about the HRP program. If there is someone trying to explore their job or they're disappointed through the social media, so the team of HRP will invite him to discuss and to interview. So this kind of effort, so we are going to do as well in Bataan, maybe next time. So because in Indonesia, a lot of user of social media, so we have to be careful with that. That's on this comment from Hannah.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, and it's I don't use social media. I mean, does anyone on our US team know about the HRP, our HRP practice on that?
I would defer to Brad or.
What was, real quick, what was the question one more time?
It's from Hannah. Do you have good practice for observation phase? For how long should they be alerted?
Sorry. So from an observation phase prior to allowing those personnel into the human reliability program, that has a tendency to vary from site to site. So for my site, that observation period is 90 days, and you have to be under direct observation for that 90 days for it to occur. Jeremy, you and I were just having a conversation about you having been enrolled in the HRP for a period of time and then taking an M&O position at headquarters, and then having to relinquish your HRP quote unquote title or because you were going to a different site, you could no longer be under direct observation. And if you were going to be put in the HRP program at headquarters, then it would set off a whole different observation requirement. So it has a tendency to vary site to site, even across the U.S. government, and it usually has to do with the individual oversight at those labs, those sites, and what they choose to do. If Joe's on, Joe may have an NRC perspective, again, because it does kind of vary across U.S. government. I'd be interested to see if Joe has an NRC take.
At NRC, there is no HRP program. They believe that it's more important to focus on drug and alcohol and essentially supervisory, awareness of what the employee is doing and things of that nature. But there is no formal HRP program as there is in the Department of Energy.
So it sounds like what NRC does, is similar. If they're focusing on the drugs and alcohol and they're focusing on the human behavior aspect of it and the observation, it kind of sounds like they're taking a more holistic approach to all of their employees rather than select employees that have access to, kind of more sensitive areas.
Well, I can recall back in probably the 1990s when I was at DOE, and we were talking with NRC at the time because both agencies try to have some comparability to how they practice security. And DOE was moving in the general direction of an HRP program at that time. And I guess they queried NRC, and NRC said that, for things like, polygraphs and things of that nature, they didn't see any real benefit to it. There wasn't any scientific, basis for it in their view. And so they looked at the elements of, monitoring individuals and having confidence the individual was a good person, for the elements of a program that would make more sense in their eyes and would bring greater value for what they were doing. DOE, on the other hand, chose to have a much more robust program that included things like polygraphs and things of that nature. So the two agencies just look at things a little bit differently. You know, some of it comes from the fact, I think, that the cultures are a little bit different between NRC and DOE. DOE, of course, is responsible for the weapons program and a large number of Category 1 facilities. NRC is really a regulator. They don't have any facilities, so that they regulate commercial facilities, and they're also run by a commission of 5 commissioners, and those commissioners come out of the education world. They come out of the congressional staffs. They come from a wide variety of positions, jobs and things like that, and experiences. And so I think the two agencies, although the general security posture is probably comparable, it's not exactly the same, and that's just the difference between the two agencies.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe and Brad. I just want to mention that in the U.S., the social media is really popular also, and I know outside of HRP, regardless of what job you're getting here, people do look up social media. Like, I know I was hiring a tutor. We're not back in school here yet, everybody, the kids, and so I was hiring a tutor for my my son. And when we were hiring, I looked up Googled her name and looked up at her social media accounts. And the same thing, with the media here in the United States. It seems to me like the first time, as soon as someone is arrested for something, the first thing the media seems to do is go to their social media pages and then upload pictures from there. So it's very interesting. I would imagine it's used quite often by people to check out other people. So yeah. And I see some more in the chat.
I think it's Bayou just answering Hannah.
Okay.
So I think that's good, Hannah. I mean, you have a very strong organization and individuals around you, like Bayou, Kyrul, and others that are well respected in this area. Then you can always go to talk to them if you have questions or concerns. But you also can feel free to reach out to the U.S. experts too after this event's over, and we'll be more than happy to share our experiences with you.
Hannah, you can practice writing to us in English.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I guess we'll go to the next slide, please. And of course, anyone should feel free to jump in at any time with more comments on that topic too, please. What do we have here? The threat side. Okay, and as we said before, when we looked at the triangle, then the recognizing of that the credible threat exists is the foundation of a strong nuclear security culture. I'm sorry, I'm behind on my English versions here. So I can see what this slide, okay, right, this is our threat side. And we have some information from the ITDB, the IAEA's incident and trafficking database here, in which member states voluntarily report incidents, and that shows that the threat exists and that incidents are happening worldwide all the time. Next slide, please, Kate. And we know the consequences can be devastating. Think about, I mentioned the sleeping guards earlier. People were fired. They were hit with heavy fines at that facility. Can you imagine if there was something going on and they didn't respond, or they were sleeping and they did have machine guns on them, they were armed. So, if they were startled and woken up and the machine gun went off. It's just, the consequences can be devastating. So, we want to focus on nuclear security culture. We want to get the best out of the people working in our facilities. We want our people to remain vigilant, feel satisfied in their jobs. And we want to address minor issues before they become any bigger. So again, just pinging your coworker. Sorry, I don't know if pinging translates. Just talking to your coworker if you notice something is off before it becomes a big problem in your workplace. Next slide, please. Sorry, in that sleeping guard incident, I remember I remember the story. Someone from the plant said he reported it to management. He came out to the news agencies, media, and said he reported it to management. And he alleges that the management didn't follow up and said, hey, just do your job. Don't worry about anybody else. But if his concerns were voiced and followed up on, he may have, the guards may not have been happy with him if he woke them up and said, hey, no sleeping on the job. But, again, he may have saved the plant a ton of money and them their jobs and the plant their reputation. We spoke a bit on Tuesday, I think, during the insider session that Brad facilitated. Yeah, and I remember Carolyn saying the thing about, there's benefits to intervening. Again, we may need to think of just a clever and kind way to say, hey, remember you left your computer on today, or, put your passwords away, or wear your badge. This is our benefits. Sorry. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, and this is our slide that just shows that everyone has a role to play, regardless of your position in the facility. And these are all the people that can help contribute to a positive, to nuclear security. Next slide, please. This is one of our former Department of Energy, U.S. Department of Energy directors, and he said that good security is 80% equipment and 20% people. Let's try to use the chat feature again. Do you believe that? And if yes, let's put a 1 in the chat. And if no, we'll put a 2 in the chat. So do you believe that good security is 20% equipment and 80% people? Yes, if yes, 1 if yes, and 2 if no.
Irene.
Yes, Cairo.
I was lucky met him in Athens in the CBRN Security Culture Workshop 2012.
Ah.
Yeah.
I didn't meet him.
Yeah, we sat at the same table during the dinner. Yeah.
Well, good. Everybody's putting 1, and very good. And then I'm sorry, I see we have one more comment from Brad. Following social media postings can also be an early indicator of behavioral changes. That's a really good point. Carolyn is correct that it's usually discouraged domestically because of strong civil liberty and privacy concerns, but that seems to be evolving too. Yeah, I mean, yeah, all good points. And that's just one of the things, if you get to know somebody, and one of the things that's encouraged in nuclear security culture, especially if you're a manager, you do walkthroughs, you are in touch with your people, you're able to openly speak with your manager about any concerns, and you expect that he or she will follow up and take action to help correct and keep you apprised of the process. So that's great. Thank you. And I think we said earlier, nuclear security relies on people and equipment, and in nuclear security culture, that relies on, that's about the people. So we need to take care of our people, and like we take care of the equipment. We can't underestimate the contribution of the human factor to nuclear security effectiveness. And, you know, as we said earlier, if we can work towards changing the attitudes and opinions of the people in our workplace, we can get them to recognize their own roles in nuclear security, and that they are valued. We may be able to get them to self-report too. Is that something that often happens in Indonesia? Is there a tendency to not self-report, or what do you think? If you think that people are self-reporting, put a 1 in the chat. If you think that they're probably not self-reporting, put a 2 in the chat. Just Mr. Bayou is replying. Oh, we have more. Okay. Yeah, see, it's interesting. I think I would agree that that's probably similar in the US, maybe. I don't know. What do our other US experts think?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's difficult for people to tell themselves, because they think if they will, that they'll lose their clearance, their job. And so they think if they hide it, and it's more likely not to be found out that way. But there should be conversations. If you come forward, then depending on obviously what happened, the company should be able to help you, or mitigate, or help you resolve that issue that you had. So there needs to be a conversation back and forth.
Yeah, agreed.
And Jeremy, in the past, at least where I was working, that people were actually rewarded for self-reporting mistakes that they had made, because it gave an opportunity to really learn from it, and then also so that it could be corrected, the issue could be corrected immediately, and the organization was not spending time on investigating necessarily, you know, trying to figure out what happened because somebody came forward and said, I made this mistake and this is what happened, and I think this is what led to the mistake. And at least our management was very supportive of that and encouraged that. And I think that's part of the culture, that the strong safety culture that we had.
Yeah, and I think in a reactor setting too, you would need people to be honest, because if someone makes a mistake, whether it's knowingly made a mistake or unwittingly made a mistake, the consequences could be drastic. And so I think by letting the individuals know that mistakes will happen, because we're all human. Because one thing we all need to realize is that we all make mistakes. There's nobody's perfect in this world. And so I think everybody should be understanding of that. And based on that, that conversation should be had. So Allison, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, as an example, when I was out doing a tour one time, I bumped a valve, and you know, I immediately stopped what I was doing, and the person that was giving me the tour, the operator, I said, I don't know if I moved this valve by bumping into it, but I bumped into it, and it's on our emergency diesel generators. So, you know, he called the control room, told them what occurred, verified that the valve had not moved, because if it had moved, that potentially could have made our diesel generators in-op. So that self-reporting is very vital to ensuring the safety of the plant.
Very much agree. And I agree that management should reward people for self-reporting, like you put in the chat. And the IEA has that in their latest guidance document. You know, the one of those, they call it the human resource elements, and one of it is that employee recognition program, where they reward employees for doing things that have a positive impact on security, including self-reporting. So yeah, that's you know, there's certainly value in there. And I wonder, what are some ways we could, what are some ways you think we can get our people to self-report? What are some other ways? Again, as was mentioned earlier, you know, highlight that in trainings we offer, have sessions like this to talk about it, and show the value in self-reporting, like Allison just shared. What are some other ways we could, since virtually every one of us has answered that we think that self-reporting is less common, what are some other ways we can encourage the people working in our facilities to self-report? Allison says they were given ice cream sometimes if they self-reported. That's a big treat in the US. Any ideas to make the self-reporting process easier?
I think it always starts from the top. If management can lead by example, then more likely everybody will follow. And so if they're the ones that they self-report and showcase to everybody that they did it, then it's more likely that the people that support or work for that individual would do the same.
Yeah, I agree. There's always, I think there's always benefit in saying, sorry, I made a mistake, especially if you're, you know, in a management position. You know, humans make mistakes, as you said, Jeremy. Everybody makes mistakes. It's just common. So if you see the managers admit that they made a mistake, you know, there's certainly value in there, and then it makes it easier for you to maybe say, hey, made a mistake. I have a boss, and I self-reported today. You know, I took a bunch of shortcuts because we had, you know, we had a ton of meetings today, and you know, I just couldn't get all my work done, and so I took some shortcuts. Fortunately, I was working behind my desk on nothing, you know, sensitive. It was all just, I'll take care of this in the morning, and I'll work on this later. And I sent quick emails instead of my normal emails. But you know, we have a great culture on one of the teams I work on, and I was able to say, hey, I'm sorry, I just can't get to that today. And she understood, and it worked out well for everyone because I didn't try to send out something and you know, and make a mistake or mess it up, because I just was able to have this honest conversation with my boss. And my coworker. There was one I asked if we could cancel a meeting because it was just too much. And he was able to, we were able to move it to another day. So I think there's always value there in just asking and saying, you know, could we maybe do something a little differently? I need a little more time, you know, and again, I mean, especially during this challenging time that we're all in. You know, people are working from home with their spouses and with their kids, with their dogs, without their equipment that they may have in their office. I was printing the presentation and I ran out of ink. I don't know if you can see it because of the weird, yeah, you can't see it. But anyway, yeah, I ran out of ink and I'm not in the office where there's just endless amounts of ink available in the copy room. So I have a really ugly copy that was made. But you know, that's just some of the things that happen while we're not working in our usual place right now. And the stressors are just greater for many of us. And you know, sometimes I worry that I know in the U.S. here we've seen as a result of the pandemic, you know, some higher crime rate, and you know, again, people are just probably more stressed out than before, and so I worry that some of that outside crime may trickle inside. You know, and then again, just the employees working our facilities are certainly experiencing stressors like we've never seen before. So it's important to check in and to build those relationships and to work to always make them stronger.
So there's a suggestion from
Yes.
Ibu Ira saying that to encourage people self-reporting, we need to create a conducive working environment, or conducive, positive working environment that encouraging people to self-reporting. That's what Ibu Ira said.
Thank you, Ira. Yeah, I totally agree. And again, we can do that by, you know, having the managers self-report and showing that, you know, everyone makes mistakes. And then again, by highlighting the benefits of it in training, different training activities, and you know, by having it in our policies and our documents. And you know, it's just one of the things that the IAEA recommends in their guidance documents. So by making that available to people, writing our own codes of conduct for security in our facilities. There's all sorts of ways we can do that. So thank you, Ira, for that comment. I'd love to just, Kate, if we could move to a few more slides down. Let's skip a few here. Okay, let's stop there for 1 second, please. Thank you, Kate. Oh yeah, this is our slide that says the foundation of a strong nuclear security culture. As we've said a few times, this is based on that IEA model that was first appeared in NSS 7. The belief that the threat exists, that nuclear security is important, and that everyone has a responsibility for nuclear security. We have a picture here. I'm not sure where it came from, but I'm looking to see if Kairul is in it. I don't know. Oh, Vienna. Oh, this is 2016. I don't
was
know.
there, but in international conference this same year.
Ah, you were there. Okay. Are you in the photo? I don't know.
Yes,
Next time we'll put the photo with you.
I spoke there.
You spoke there? Yeah. Well, thank you for all your comments and questions here. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to see my mentor Kairul again, and to work with you, and to work with the Sabotage US team and our wonderful interpreters. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I've always admired what you've done in the area of nuclear security culture, and like we've said, we've used you as a great example. And as an example of best practices when we work with many of our other partner countries, member states who are starting programs for nuclear security culture. Many of them have not performed self-assessments yet, so we're happy to share the information on your center. And we look forward to many more engagements like this. We'd love to have more like this. It's just been a great pleasure for me, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, Brad, I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy. So, so that really kind of concludes all of the modules that we had for this engagement. So over the next couple of minutes, I'd like to take a moment to recap what we went over, and then I'll hand it off to Jeremy and Taylor for some closing remarks. So if you guys remember, we started out the sessions. Started part one with the fundamentals of nuclear security. We talked about barriers and delay and response activities, and then we moved to a discussion of what kind of targets we might see at research reactors from a sabotage perspective as well as from a theft perspective. So to kind of highlight some of those important features there, those important parts, remember that research reactors, while you're doing experiments, you have material that may be of theft concern. You also have material if you are conducting, say radioisotope production of some sort. You also have radioisotopes that may be of sabotage concern, depending on how the competent authority sets your URC and HRC guidelines. On day two, we discussed what those competent authority responsibilities were with respect to setting things like URC and HRC guidelines, conducting or facilitating threat assessments so that the competent authority can set prescriptive guidelines for protection, and or designing a design basis threat document should the regulatory body decide that's what we what should be done. We also talked a little bit about sabotage scenario development and how sabotage scenarios might play out. And then on day three, we kind of talked design basis threat. We worked through how that design basis threat is designed and how that design basis threat kind of comes into place with local, regional, and international threat assessments, and a decision by the competent authority to take that threat assessment and somewhat filter it through kind of that lens of policy, like I said that evening. And we talked a little bit more about the relationship between sabotage analysis and nuclear safety, and how safety and security, when it comes to sabotage analysis, are really intertwined. When you look at it at the kind of at the root, in order to have a successful sabotage act, in many cases you're having to override safety systems. We talked about contingency plans and how we go about developing the physical protection system. And that rounded out the first week. Does anybody have any questions that they may have thought of between that first week and now that they might like to throw in the chat? If you have something, please go ahead and throw it in the chat, and we'll get it answered before we conclude this evening. Of course, this week began with identification of targets that need to be protected by targets that may be affected by sabotage. The presentation itself was geared in some cases towards power reactors, but there was a lot of takeaways there that can be applied to research reactors. And we also talked about insider protection measures on the first morning. Sorry. And then yesterday we talked cybersecurity concerns and walked through some potential scenarios about how cybersecurity relates to physical protection and the potential issues and outcomes that can come from a cyber attack. And then Carolyn rounded out the night with nuclear material accounting and control. And then, of course, tonight, Aaron and Jeremy gave a great presentation on nuclear security culture. And again, thanks, Jeremy and Aaron, for tonight. With that, Jeremy, would you like to say anything before we close out?
Sure. Thanks, Brad. And so this was our first engagement with you virtually. And I know we have a strong relationship from working with you in the past. And personally, my relationship with Indonesia has gone back since 2012, I think 2013, back in Yogyakarta. And so I have your culture has a near and dear place in my heart. And I enjoy everything about your culture, your country, and you. And so I look forward to our ongoing relationships, ongoing courses, ongoing conversations we have in the future, not only here next month with the NMAC course, but in the future. So I think with the coronavirus, it's brought up some unique experiences, but I think it's also grown us a little bit closer as we now come a new way to communicate through this platform. And so I think with the negativity of the coronavirus, I think there's a positive aspect that comes out of this, and we can always do more virtual events and have more conversations with you. And so I want to thank the Sabotage team for putting this course together. This was the first time it was deployed, so you were the first audience to see this. And if there's anything that you liked about it, or if there's things that you would like us to adjust, please let us know so we can get it back to the team. Because that's one reason why we picked Indonesia, is because you're very forthcoming when it comes to things. And so from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate everything that you and your colleagues have done these past 2 weeks, and I look forward to our ongoing conversations. So I will hand the floor over to Taylor, and then I think Taylor will hand it over to either Mr. Abayu or Mr. Khairul. Taylor?
Thank you, Jeremy. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you, Brad, for your wonderful overview of the past this week and then 2 weeks ago. And thank you, Jeremy, for your kind words. And I would like to echo everything that you're saying. I would just like to reiterate that our cooperation on nuclear security topics and critical topics like sabotage mitigation are extremely important to me and my colleagues here on this call, and that I think the testament to be able to have this workshop virtually during COVID, and despite that negativity that Jeremy was describing, and our sincere disappointment at not being able to travel and visit you all, it still indicates how important it is to both of us to be able to continue to work on nuclear security. And that is shown in, I think, the number of our experts who have joined us on the call today to be able to support this engagement, as well as the number of participants that have joined us from Indonesia. And I just would like to highlight that and recognize that, because I think it is such a bright spot in being able to continue our collaboration. It also takes a great deal of work, so I want to make sure that I thank our experts and instructors on the call who join late at night to be able to deliver these modules and courses. I would also like to thank Reza and Shirley for being our excellent, wonderful interpreters to make sure that we never skip a beat and are able to appropriately translate all of the wonderful technical content, and they really do such a wonderful job. And I would also like to thank CET and Baton, and especially Mr. Fatmuanis and Mr. Khairul. A lot of work I know goes on behind the scenes to be able to allow this event to happen with our team, and I just want to recognize you all for the hard work that you put in to make this possible. And again, I think that that just demonstrates your commitment as partners in nuclear security, and that's so critical to us. And so thank you, because without you, this really wouldn't happen. So with that, I really just wanted to thank you all participants. Without your participation and honesty and openness to be able to explore these topics with us, this course would have not had the same impact. And so I really hope you did enjoy your interactions with our instructors, because I know we very much enjoyed getting to know you and being able to interact with you for the past few weeks. And I hope that we can sincerely do that in the future as well. So just thank you again, and I really look forward to being able to continue our engagements, even if they are virtually for the time being.
Thank you, Taylor.